What is the weirdest or creepiest Earth or space fact you know? Story 1. There is a squid called the bigfin squid that we've only seen 3 times. Their tentacles are so long they reach to the seafloor, about 26 feet long, and scientists say the ones we've seen are more than likely not adults. They even have elbows. We don't really know much about them since they are rarely seen. Look on Google and you'll see how scary they are. And yes, they are in the deep, deep ocean, approx 5,000 feet deep. Story 2. The exact middle of nowhere. It's a spot in the Pacific Ocean named Point Nemo that's 2688 kilometers, 1451 nautical miles from nearest land. It's roughly between New Zealand and South America. More specifically, Point Nemo is between the Easter Islands, the Pitcairn Islands, and Antarctica. Suppose you were in a ship that sank at Point Nemo and you had to climb into a life raft. If you were on your own without a radio, just paddling and collecting rainwater and catching fish, then if you could travel 20 miles a day, it would take 2.5 months to reach the nearest land if you navigated perfectly. Story 3. This is more interesting than weird, but I'll say it anyway. Theoretically, if an alien living on a planet 200 million light years away had a device by which they could view Earth due to the 200 light years gap in light reach, instead of seeing humans through the device, aliens would instead see dinosaurs from the Jurassic period, since that's the era from which the light has reached till that point. There's a good episode of the original Star Trek series about that. It's called The Squire of Gothos. This alien is on a planet a few hundred light years away from Earth and looking at it through a powerful telescope. When Kirk shows up, the alien has this whole Victorian setup. Story 4. NASA's current fleet of spacesuits were reported to cost between $15 million and $22 million in 1974. In fact, NASA's first all female spacewalk was postponed because the space station had only one medium sized suit. This milestone was finally achieved when NASA sent up a medium torso shell to fit the existing larger suit. The most expensive component of the spacesuit are the gloves. Story 5. Everyone knows the heavenly bodies are giant, almost unthinkable. But the reality also is that life scales down just as much, and maybe even farther than it would scale up. We have bacteria, atoms, proteins, and the likes that all do their part, making up the very fabrics of reality we inhabit. In my opinion, Oppie, the greatest space and Earth fact is that we managed to find existence here in the middle of ginormous and minuscule Story 6 superflares happen on every star, which includes our own sun. But since the sun is a rather old and quiet star, it only happens every other 1,000 years or so. But they happen, and it's not a matter if, but when it happens. A super flare from the sun wouldn't be that deadly and devastating as it sounds, but it would be enough to roast satellite communication, cause global blackouts, and a thick layer of radiation around Earth. Scientists guess the next super flare will occur within the next 100 years. Anyway, have a nice day. Story 7. A gamma ray burst from a few thousand light years away ago would set the atmosphere on fire, and we wouldn't even know it was coming until it already happened, because the wave front travels at the speed of light. There could be a black hole hurtling right at us, but we have no clue it's coming. What would happen if a black hole the size of a nickel were to appear in your pocket? You'd die. If it has the mass of a nickel, it would radiate away in an instant and explode worse than Hiroshima. If it had the radius of a nickel, you'd fall in, and the black hole would fall into the Earth's core and consume it from the inside out. There's a whole section of our galaxy that we can't see, the exact opposite side from us. The pictures of the Milky Way aren't the Milky Way. They are other galaxies that we think look like us. Every day, millions of stars and galaxies disappear beyond the cosmic horizon, never to be seen again, because cosmic inflation means that space is expanding too fast for their light to ever reach us again. The colors in a nebula picture are representative colors used to distinguish materials slash density slash light beyond our visible spectrum. They wouldn't be that color up close. The solar system has a tail. For half the year, the distance to the Voyager probes decreases. Story 8 Deep Sea, Gigantism. There are species that live deep underwater that are massive compared to their shallow water counterparts. The only way we've come across them is when they've washed up on shore or were caught by fishermen because they wandered into more shallow water. But we really have no idea what the scope or scale of how large these creatures can get because we can't study them at the depth in which they live. For all we know, the found creatures were babies that were separated from their mothers. Story 9. I always thought it was cool that throughout all human history, there are still parts of the world where no one has stepped foot. Take a hiking trail, for instance. If I walk even 30 feet off the trail, I could potentially be standing somewhere no one else has stood before. I could have been the first person to walk in that area. I don't have any evidence that this is the case, but I don't know. I had the thought one day, so I figured I'd put that out there. Story 10. At any moment, anywhere in the known universe, there could be a vacuum metastability event. The results of this event would be a massively exothermic shock propagating at the speed of light that would tear the entire universe down to a lower energy state. Nothing we know would remain. Nothing that could exist in this new universe would be familiar. This event could happen at any point, anywhere in the universe, and we will someday just be struck by its shockwave and everything we know will be obliterated in an instant. And there's literally nothing to be done in that case. Story 11 Time is just a social construct created by humans. Although according to Einstein's relativity theory, time is a part of the physical makeup of our world. There are different theories about space-time, but that's the thing. They are just theories. We don't know for sure how time works. The theory that spooks me the most is the past, present, and future exist simultaneously. So what is going to happen has already happened. All theories are just theories. Scientific theory means more than it's a guess. It means that it's a reasoned model backed up by observations and measurements and can make testable predictions. So the theory of space-time, i.e. general relativity, explains a great deal about the universe we perceive and makes predictions we can test, and we have, and they turn out to agree with what we measure. So to say we don't understand how time works isn't really true. We understand a lot about how time behaves, how it is not constant for all observers. Whether time is real is a philosophical question of how humans perceive the universe. Story 12. One of Saturn's moons is potentially habitable. There is a planet 9, and there is solid evidence of it existing. It just hasn't been observed yet. It is on the outskirts of the solar system, Oort cloud region, and the Voyager 2 took only 9 years to reach Pluto, but needs 50 years to reach planet 9, which is wild to me and kind of creepy. The Oort cloud is about 3 light years away from the sun, and the closest star is 4 light years away, which means the border of the solar system is closest to another star system than the sun itself. Story 13 Mars sucks to live on. First off, it has a weak magnetosphere, so say hello to solar winds that have obliterated a lot of the atmosphere and aren't good for you unless you like cancer. It's also crazy dusty, and the dust has a charge, so it's likely your suit would just be a red, dusty mess. I'm pretty sure solar panels are way less effective also. It's also crazy cold, like literally Antarctica cold. Some of these issues have some workarounds, but it's still a challenging mess. It's like living in Antarctica with the dust of the desert and the radiation of space. Story 14. Most of the stars we see at night are hundreds or thousands of light years away. Because they are so far away, we don't really know which ones still exist. If a star were 100 light years away and it died, we would not know, without telescopes and similar things, for several years as it's taking light so long to reach Earth. I'll use this as an example. If the sun were to die out and lose all of its light instantly, we would not know without telescopes for about 8 minutes. Story 15. The rocket boosters on the sides of the U.S. space shuttle are about the width of two horses. The reason: the rockets were built in another state and shipped to Florida via rail car, so they had to be the size of a rail car. The size of a rail car was determined by the width of the axles and wheels that were available at the time from horse carriages. Those companies made carriages' wheels made them wide enough to fit the ruts in the British European roads made by the Romans. The Romans made ruts in the road from their army's war chariots, which were roughly 2 horses wide. Story 16. That the Earth was once an egg shape. Scientists say that 5 minutes after the Big Bang, the orbit of the supergalaxy cluster, the one eventually to contain our galaxy, kept an atypical gyration. This led to the Earth oscillating between an egg and cube-like shape for millions of years. What do you mean by 5 minutes after the Big Bang? It sounds from reading this that galaxies, planets, rock formations, and stars just appeared within 5 minutes of Earth time in our universe. Willing to bet that 5 minutes after the Big Bang, the moment where extreme expansion slows greatly, but is by no means slow, we were just mere protons and neutrons doing enormous circular orbits. After a much more amount of time, Earth time, they finally started getting close enough to form what we currently call atoms. Before that, there were simply the atomic components of protons and neutrons doing the exact same thing. My knowledge of the further components for atomic components of atoms is very vague, and I would be enlightened for some help. Story 17. Around Kakadu in northern Australia, there are large uranium deposits. Areas near this region are known to the local indigenous people as Sickness Country. A number of locations north of Catherine in an area known to us as Sickness Country. Bulong the rainbow serpent inhabits the deep green pools found in the second gorge. We do not fish in the pools where Bulong sits. When fishing close to these pools, we can take only a small portion of the fish caught and throw back the rest in order to appease Bulong. Drinking water must not be taken from these deep pools, but rather from the shallow associated waters. Pregnant women and new initiates may not swim in the Catherine River for fear of disturbing Bulong, who must not be spoken to and must be left undisturbed. Story 18. Time's not real. Like at all. Things like writing, time, language, gender, none of it is real. It's things we made so the world made more sense. Make it easier to understand. Gender, we weren't born into the world knowing boys should like blue and be tough or such. And we weren't born thinking girls should cook or clean. It was proven that in the Stone and Bronze era, the young hunted, no matter the sex, and the old stayed back and cooked. Time was made because it was more efficient. It's easier to pick crops and hunt in the day than it is at night when it's colder and darker. And since you're working in the day, you may as well make the dark times when you sleep, may as well name them, may as well even add different portions and sections of the day to morning, midday, noon, evening, night, midnight, early morning. Writing and language was made to communicate better. That's why it is different in every country. We weren't born knowing it. We made it. We created every word because we thought they were needed. It's not really creepy. In a way, it's beautiful. Someone created the word gorgeous. Someone made the word moonlight, and everyone tagged on. Maybe I'm looking too deep into it, but we made it all. Some things should stay, but I personally think gender can be a pretty stupid thing sometimes. And hey, that's coming from an extremely feminine girl who loves cleaning and baking. Story 19. Should you ever go over a waterfall or rapid in a river, know that the fall is not the most dangerous part. More often than not, the most life-threatening bit is right after you hit the water again, when that foamy, fast-moving water sucks you into the whirling vacuum for an undetermined amount of time. Sometimes you're flipped and dragged around like you're stuck in a washing machine, and sometimes you're plopped right down into the dirt at the bottom of the stream and kept there by the water pressure. If you hit your head and get knocked out at any point, you're likely to drown in your sleep and stay in that vacuum until it decides to spit you out and let your body wash up downstream. It takes a lot of fighting to get out, and sometimes the current can drag you right back in. Story 20. At some point in the future, billions of years, every single galaxy and star outside of the Milky Way will be unobservable. This is due to the nature of the universe expanding, and there will be a point where all galaxies are moving away from each other so fast that light from those galaxies won't be able to be seen anymore, and we won't be able to go fast enough to catch up with the expansion of the universe. Basically, unless we get intergalactic travel sorted fast, we won't be going out of the galaxy and may never leave the galaxy. Story 21. Depending on whether or not our understanding of thermodynamics and or universal constants in general is correct, there will eventually be a point in time where the distance between the two nearest atoms will be greater than the distance between Sol and Pluto. This is what's known as the heat death of the universe. Another good one is that by the nature of reality, there is a breaking point at which everything we understand about everything breaks down and begins to fail. A stress point in which all of our known laws stop working and reality gets real screwy. I also like the fact that diamonds are legitimately, virtually, and hypothetically worthless. They are so common on Earth that aside from their physical attractiveness and utility, they have no inherent value. And in space, there's a record of an entire extrasolar planet that is literally made of diamond. 55 Cancri E for Google reference. Edit. Bonus fact. Scientific assumptions, also known as axioms, are a thing. An axiom is a statement or proposition which is regarded as being established, accepted, or self-evidently true. Or in layman's terms, it just is because it has to be. The most common axiom we rely on is so basic that it can be difficult to really grasp at first. The first axiom that must always be assumed is that reality is real. We have no way of proving whether or not the statement reality is real is true. We can't test it because we literally cannot begin to comprehend what a fake reality is, was or would be. Therefore, everything you do, every thought you think, every single expectation you have is based on the potentially incorrect assumption that reality is what you experience. Story 22. Most people, if not everyone, have a hard time truly fathoming the concept of infinity. According to Wikipedia, the possibility of an Earth-like planet where life is sustainable in it, existing in any given galaxy, is about 1 in 60 billion. Seems like it's truly a miracle that we exist, right? Well, if the universe is truly infinite, then there is technically an infinite amount of Earths existing. Let that sink in for a moment. There is an infinite amount of something that the probability of it existing is next to nothing. Story 23. Alpha Centauri is a binary star system, not including Proxima Centauri, that is about 4.3 light years away from the Sun. Should the stable orbits of the two stars suddenly collapse, the resulting supernova from the colliding stars will destroy not just our star system, but about every system in a 20-30 light-year radius, Exodus Proxima Centauri, Barnard's Star, Wolf 359, Epsilon Eridani, Teegarden Star, etc., rendering every planet in these systems, including Earth, sterile due to the intense radiation from the supernova. The Proxima Centauri system, a mere 0.1, 0.2 light years away from the Alpha Centauri system, may even be completely obliterated as a result due to its close proximity. By the time we know, it's already too late. The radiation emitted from the star's collapse would have already overpowered Earth's magnetic field and would have begun shredding apart our ozone layer and atmosphere. You lay on the ground in a ruined city, your flesh searing from the intense radiation. You are slowly suffocated by the thinning atmosphere of Earth. The last thing you see before you finally succumb is the massive supernova of the Alpha Centaurus, brighter than the sun, filling up an entire portion of sky. Story 24. I've always been fascinated, terrified of space ever since I was a kid and saw a GIF of the planets in our system compared to the biggest objects in the known universe. Some things that always fuck me up is the existence of the cosmic web, the fact our galaxy is eventually going to collide with Andromeda, and the fact the sky will eventually be nothing but darkness. One thing I always find fun to think about is the supermassive black hole the Hubble telescope spotted that's inevitably going to break free from its own galaxy and roam the universe, sucking up anything it comes across. Story 25. Not an astrophysicist by any stretch, but repeatedly finding myself watching them on YouTube. With that, there are the things I cannot in any way understand, things where I can listen to the explanation, but cannot even understand a thesis. Then there are the things that I can digest and understand while it's being explained, but am a mouth-breathing, window-licking drooler on the subject about 4.5 seconds after they stop speaking. Then there are the things that I can understand. So in the category of things I can grasp when a smart person is talking is gravity's effect on time dilation, like two clocks set exactly the same, launched into two different orbits, and their times will be different if coming back to Earth, and time dilation, WRT, the event horizon. Time stopping? What? So does that mean, unless time stops instantly, that there is potentially a being that, from his perspective, is still in between heartbeats, frozen in time, but from the outside perspective disappeared into nothing a billion years ago? Story 26. A bit obvious, but just a reminder, if you get stranded in space, let's say you somehow get ejected from a spaceship, your instinct would be to swim your way to somewhere. But there's no such thing as swinging your arms in space and changing your trajectory. As much as the movie Gravity has a lot of flaws and inaccuracies, if you've seen the part where Sandra Bullock's character is spinning nonstop and hyperventilating, yeah, that's pretty much you. If you were sent spinning away from something, although IDK, what type of equipments astronauts have to prevent this from happening, it's very likely it wouldn't be easy to save yourself from this. Just thinking about drifting away, knowing you can do nothing, and just waiting for your oxygen supply to run out is terrifying. Story 27. There's a rogue black hole soaring through space super fast that at any second could destroy the whole solar system. We wouldn't even know it was coming towards us because it's so fast that if it ever arrived here, the whole world would be gone in an instant and we wouldn't even know. That's how fast it is. Scientists believe it's rogue because the galaxy it was in the center of was destroyed, so now it's got no galaxy to be tethered to. Anyway, pretty spooky. Story 28. To me, it was the question of whether your universe is a perfect vacuum or a false vacuum. I am not a physicist, but will try to explain it. If the universe is in a perfect vacuum, then things are good. It essentially means that the universe is stable. If the universe is a false vacuum, then there is a thing called false vacuum decay. This just seems to mean that a false vacuum could decay into a true vacuum. This state change will bubble out and spread out at the speed of light, so it is undetectable. That means that the bubble would hit us before we were able to observe it was even coming at us. This state of change could have a variety of effects. The worst one is that the false vacuum causes space-time to enter an unstable state, and that the fundamental forces that govern our universe would cease to exist. This would cause everything down to the fundamental particles to come apart, and I even read that gravity would disintegrate itself. In case you didn't know, nothing would survive its particles coming apart. Stars, gravity, planets, all of it really would disintegrate into something. I read that in one hypothesis, it would cause a complete reorganization of the laws of physics and the universe. As we know, it would cease to exist. I am not a physicist, but pretty much everyone agrees we would most likely not survive a false vacuum scenario. Of course, there are other models that say the universe, stars, and even biological life might survive the event. The truth is that we don't really know what state the universe is in and what would really happen if we were in a false vacuum that decayed into a true vacuum. Please, anyone more knowledgeable on this, correct anything where I am wrong.